Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Inside Marketing. And today I am really excited to be joined by James McCormick, who is a marketing advisor and market analyst with a lot of experience in the world of marketing. And I think we're going to have a really exciting discussion today. So thanks, James, for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Sophie. It's an awesome podcast, by the way. It's a privilege to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you. No problem at all. Thanks for taking the time. Well, today I think we're going to cover a lot of fascinating topics. James, you bring a lot of interesting experience from everything you've done in your career so far, and so really excited to get into that. I guess to kick off with, James, a really useful thing to start us off would be perhaps if you can tell us a little bit about your journey so far in marketing, where you started, how you got to where you are, and maybe we can go down some avenues with regards to some of those roles as to how they still continue to form how you approach marketing these days. I'm sure there's going to be lots of interesting things there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'd say I'm a pretty unconventional, but I think a lot of marketers have a kind of unconventional journey into marketing, I would say, certainly the
Yeah.
ones that I meet. Actually, I started out as a data guy. I was a geophysicist looking for diamonds off
Oh,
the west coast of Africa, getting really seasick. So I was kind of like, oh, I need another job, right? Because it was super unpleasant for me. But actually, before I kind of move on, but it's quite interesting. A lot of the data-driven marketing techniques, like funnel-driven performance marketing, a lot of
mm,
the ideas I have today are influenced from those times when you are looking for economic deposits of mineralogy. For instance, you have this like
mhm.
massive 100 kilometer by 100 kilometer area, and you got to look for economic deposits there, right? You
Yeah.
have to have a kind of a funnel-based, data-based approach from like broad area surveys to kind of more narrow area surveys to eventually your sampling to eventually mining, right? And that's
Mm,
kind of what we try to do as marketers. The market space is massive, right? The potential addressable market is massive. Where do we even start? And we can't, typical marketing teams don't have unlimited budgets. I've yet to work for one anyway. And you
yeah, or
need
are
to
forecasted
really,
on time.
yeah, exactly. So where's the opportunity and like identifying
Yeah.
that? And so that's it, and a lot of my, we'll probably discuss a bit later, but a lot of the way I think kind of comes from those days of getting seasick of, looking for diamonds. Essentially,
Mm,
I got into the tech market through what we location-based technologies like GIS,
okay.
which today we
Hmm.
use in marketing for location-based targeting, those kind of things.
Yeah, of course.
And actually, I started off working for tech companies, running teams that implement these technologies.
Okay.
Initially, it was spatial technologies, and then just almost
Mm,
by accident, I worked for this cross-channel campaign management technology vendor. Don't know, may or may not know them, Melterian, and started running
okay.
their teams implementing cross-channel engagement right in the kind of, let's say, the dawn of when these technologies were
Yeah.
like interesting, and so I
Mm,
kind of fell into it, and then essentially worked for Forrester as a market analyst, tracking these
mhm,
marketing technologies and these data-driven marketing technologies for about a decade, and
mm,
then got into the startup world, managing their marketing and product strategy teams for companies like Content Square and Creative X, who Mitchell and Stone might know and work with as around the
yeah.
understanding of creative and its compliance to brands, and
Yeah.
it's very much kind of data driven. So yeah, that's how. So essentially, I think it's important for anybody listening to know my tendencies or biases is around B2B technology marketing within that
Sure.
space. It has its own specific problems, as well as the kind of general problems that we have as marketers in general. But I bring that kind of perspective, right? The B2B technology marketing. What's the opportunities around there?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my journey. I mean, we can go spend another 8 hours, but we won't, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, fascinating. I love the story of the role at the beginning and the seasickness. It's clearly stuck with you, but really interesting, I think, to consider the parallel there between finding the diamonds and still now in your role, you're still trying to find the diamonds, and that's what
Yeah.
we're all trying to do, really. And I think in the age that we're now in, and all the masses of information that we're presented with, that's just becoming more and more difficult, really, to understand how to interpret that data. We all
Mhm.
know that the success and the right choices lie in the data, but when there are so many different channels that we get data from, it's constant, it's always evolving. Here's a new metric, here's something else you might be interested in. It's pretty overwhelming. I wonder how you tackle that, or how you kind of coach people to tackle that when information just keeps coming at us.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, it's about I'm a kind of left brain, right brain thing. I would say
Mm,
I bring the kind of more data driven part to marketing, but I
yeah.
think a lot of marketers nowadays into the profession as creatives, right? And creatives are
Yes.
like awesome, don't get me wrong. I've worked with some like awesome people, but I think we need to be more, especially as a practice overall. I mean, individually, we're always going to be have tendencies to one, but as a marketing practice overall, we need to be good at the science as well as the creative part of what we do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, you sometimes get asked, what's the most important thing in marketing? Is it the data-driven side or the creative side? Well, it's like, which is the most important thing on a bicycle? Which is it, the back wheel or the front wheel? You kind of need
Yeah.
both, right,
Yeah, you
to
do.
function. And I think certainly historically, marketing has been pretty weak on probably two areas. One is the data and the technology side of things, like really understanding uh, the data, so really understanding the market. Like for instance, particularly in the technology space, understanding TAM,
Yeah.
a total
Yeah.
addressable market, who our buyer is, what are their needs compared to what our offering has to offer, whether it's technology or product or
Yeah.
service or whatever, is not something we've been generally good at, especially in the
Mm,
technology space. I don't want to talk too much about the, some of the kind of retail. I think some of the retail marketers are really good at this, but in the technology
yeah.
space, understanding of our market fit is being kind of left to the product guys and the sales teams.
Mm,
And we as
yeah. Yeah.
marketers are just been relegated to these kind of performance marketing, just execute, get your
Yeah.
clicks, get your conversions, but don't really execute against that market that we're telling you to. And I think we need to kind of move beyond that. That's a huge challenge to marketing. And part of that is being good at the data side of things, so we can go to the
Mm,
sales team, the marketing team, the exec, sorry, the product team, the exec, and say, this is our market. This is the segment that is really in need of where we of our
mm,
products offerings. And by the way, these are the high value segments. These are the low value segments, and really get become market analysts. Again,
yeah.
as you can see, this my biases are kind of come from that. And there's a lot
Mm,
of weaknesses in the marketing teams that I've advised and certainly led. But yeah, so
yeah.
that's really interesting.
It's the foundation. It's critical thinking, isn't it? And it's kind of
Yeah.
what I like to call it detective mode. So always being critical and skeptical of the information that we're seeing. I wonder why you mentioned that that's been a weakness, and that's something that you've observed in your work. Why do you think that is a weakness? Do you think that's just because of relatively how quickly we've suddenly had access to all of this data and all of this information to inform our strategies, and we haven't quite caught up with how to interpret it? Do you think it's that or other things?
Yes, I think it was multiple things, of course. Nothing's ever
Yeah.
simple. But actually, you raise a good point. I think the certainly the technology and the opportunities that it provides us is almost like ahead of us, right? And we do
Yeah.
need to get our marketing courses and that you get at colleges and universities need to kind of keep up with that. When you kind of
Yeah.
go to an average course, that they're talking about AI and predictive scoring, and for instance AI co-pilots and how they can help marketers. They're probably
Mm,
just catching up to that, but actually there's a more, I think, pervasive problem, is that marketing is just generally particularly in fairly immature sectors like technology sector, like the tech sector,
mhm.
which is, I'm not saying it's totally immature. It has certainly progressed over the last couple of decades.
Yeah.
But so in the kind of less mature sectors, marketing is not really considered a strategic asset. So if you speak
Yeah.
to, and my speciality is tech startups, you speak to the average founder, she or he takes a lot of convincing to spend some money on marketing, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
category definition, brand creation, whether it's performance marketing they get, right?
Mm,
Just like give me some leads.
Yeah.
marketing qualified leads, sales qualified, just give me that. Everything else I don't really care about. And which is a very kind of it's really holding marketing back. And
Yeah.
so it's just the lack of strong marketing leadership and a strong marketing business case within companies that certainly I deal with has certainly held back the effectiveness of marketing. So there are some really, I mean, marketing folks that succeed are some of the best in industry, professionals in industry, right? But they're
Mm,
swimming against a strong channel there,
yeah.
flow.
And like with anything, that change takes a long time to kind of come into effect, and that nervousness around marketing and its
Yeah,
efficacy and its place in an overall strategy for a business,
yeah,
it's a fight, isn't it? I mean, I wonder what
yeah.
you've observed in kind of marketing leaders there that you referenced that really, really are driving forward. What are the qualities that they have? I imagine it's something to do with data, but
Yeah.
also other things maybe that you recognize that they have that could turn the tide and really, I don't know, that they're the forerunners in this new wave of marketing leaders.
Yeah, I think the main thing is charisma. I mean, it sounds very
Hmm.
basic and animalistic, but to be able to kind of sit in a board or a
Yes.
management meeting and hold their own and kind of look people in the eye and say, this is, these are the problems that we really need to tackle, and like leadership qualities are probably a better way of putting it, right? And that's not only like leading your own team, but leading the marketing narrative and
Mm,
with it. That's kind of key. So
of course,
let's not
yeah.
get away with that. But of course, then there's the let's say the capabilities around that, the marketing. So not only to execute the funnel, for instance, and
Mm,
there's a lot of great performance marketers that kind of just look at measuring that in funnel from the top to the bottom. Of course, those basics are really needed and really good, but also
yeah.
to think beyond the funnel. I think full customer lifecycle marketing. Is super important. And certainly when you look at the data that shows the successful companies like the Ubers and like perhaps some of the more B2B kind of technology providers, they have full funnel or full life cycle marketing, right from marketing led growth strategies, so your typical
Yeah.
funnel based, but also baking it into the product and the service. The marketing drives kind of product and service adoption, which drives kind of top line revenue and that whole thing, and being
Yeah.
able to have and hold their own in the organization around the whole go to market, right? And
Hmm.
so that kind of strategic thinking is
Mm,
like super important that in order to really succeed as a marketing team, and you need a leader that appreciates that and puts in place your product-led growth marketing team, your market-led growth marketing team, the way that they
mm.
work together, and to build those relationships, particularly with product nowadays, but of course with sales. So those are the things that
Yeah.
really need to succeed.
Of course, yeah, and I think that confidence element and that charisma element, yeah, like you say, can't be underestimated because at the end of the day, they're fighting for that seat at the table and fighting for that importance of marketing in the wider business
Yeah,
conversation,
yeah.
and that needs a certain type of person, and we all know people like that. So,
Exactly. So, Sophie,
yeah,
just an interesting stat, just before I
yeah, of
forget, it's
course,
kind
of
of
course, please
related
do.
to that.
Mm,
So, when you, particularly around technology startups, which is my kind of area, when you kind of
mhm.
look at the data and you say, well, by the way, technology startups, it's Darwinian,
Yeah,
of every startup, I think by the time you get to about 10, 15 years out, 75% of all startups have failed in the technology.
yeah,
They've just failed, they've been
yeah,
acquired, they've disappeared or whatever. So when you kind of look at reasons why that failure, is it cash flow problems? Is it like recruitment issues? Yeah, those are issues. But the two
yeah.
biggest issues by far is product market fit, not understanding that, and
100%, yeah,
also the wrong marketing strategy. Those are the two biggest things. So it's nothing to do with the product. It's not to do with
mm,
sales. It's not to do with investment. It's to do with marketing are the biggest reasons why,
yeah,
tech startups fail. And it's like,
yeah,
it's a bloodbath out there. And
yeah,
mostly it's due because marketing haven't really like stepped up
yeah.
and done their job. Not necessarily because it's their fault, but, for some of the reasons we just talked about.
Yeah, that's so interesting, isn't it? And it's that kind of age-old analogy of, if we start off on a route and we're slightly a few degrees off course and we keep pushing along on that same course, suddenly we look back and hang on a second, we've come way too far from where we wanted to go. And I think
Yeah.
that's often the issue. And we start off with something, or businesses can start off with something that might by and large be roughly the angle we need to go at. But if it's slightly off, by the time we put effort into it, built out our campaigns and made ground in that direction, we're not really where we want to be. And I don't know if you'd
Mm.
agree, maybe that's the reason why the marketing,
Yeah,
if
I
you get the
mean,
marketing wrong, I don't know what you
yes, I think it
what
is
you think is wrong.
so I mean, the way I interpret what you say, and I don't disagree with it, is like we head off in the right direction, the wrong direction. We're having the wrong effect, right?
Of
But
course.
I would say it even goes more fundamental for that. Sometimes, I think it was my mother or my dad almost said, like, even the wrong decision is better than no decision, right? And I think sometimes, actually, one of the most pervasive issues we have when it comes to speaking to our market and bringing them in, you know, is that we haven't really made as an organization, a decision around who we're going to speak to, so the
Yeah.
market that we want to speak to, how are we going to speak to them, and what we're going to offer. I mean, how
Hmm.
often have I seen, and I'm pretty sure within what you do on a day-to-day basis, Sophie, do you see the marketing team or a campaign kind of pushing towards a particular market, a demographic with a particular campaign, with a particular offering, or with a particular KPIs or outcomes that you're trying to drive. And then the sales team are like talking totally different,
Yeah.
or even other parts of the marketing team, the social team are not speaking with the direct campaign. It's
Yeah.
just as an organization we
Yeah.
have not we're not even applying the right effect, right? We're
Hmm.
not even applying an effect. We're not being effective. So it's not even the wrong or the right effect. It's just we've been diluting whatever it is we're trying to do because we
Yeah.
don't know as an organization. So that is kind of key. And again, it comes down to like leadership, right? Marketing leadership and actually leadership at the exec level
Yes.
in these approaches.
Yeah, I so agree with that. And I think in so many businesses that I speak to, that can often come from, everything being pretty disjointed because by the way that marketing happens now, particularly in smaller companies, there's one agency taking care of, performance marketing, one agency taking care of the social media marketing and all different things. And so, like you say, it's a job in itself for somebody to sit on top of that and make sure that everyone's doing the same strategy. And if there's a small
Mm.
change, that's reflected everywhere. And I think that's the bit that's often not executed very well. And I get it. That's a full-time job amongst many other things
Yeah.
that people have to do. And I think the other point that I would just agree with you there on is uh, I think the mistake that we make is not being reflective enough on the agreements that we do take within our marketing strategy. So we'll have a fixed idea and we'll say, okay, cool, we're going to go for this demographic, we're going to go for this strategy, but then we're not constantly putting it under the microscope. It's almost like once we've agreed on it, we might report on it in a few months' time, but it's not that
Yeah.
constant. Is that working? Is
Yeah,
that working?
consistency, like boom, boom, doing the
Yeah,
same thing, saying the
exactly.
same thing.
Yeah,
I agree with and that's a reflection of like, the other noise within the organization pulling,
yeah,
that apart basically. So yeah,
yeah.
consistency
Yeah,
is a main
that's
thing.
huge, isn't it? It's difficult. It's a lot of the things that we've talked about there. I mean, definite problems, very difficult for people to get on top of because that's happening everywhere in all businesses. I wonder if there are any other challenges that you had in mind where, just thinking about the roles that marketers have in businesses, either in smaller businesses or in large organizations as well, and what
Mhm.
you think also is pretty difficult now for people in those roles. What are they up against?
Yeah, I mean, the macroeconomic environment, that's
Yeah,
the elephant
of
in the room
course.
at the moment. It's been
Yeah.
tough for all of us,
Mm.
especially in this part of the world,
Yeah.
for the last 2 years. And I think, largely speaking, marketing teams are seen as cost centers. So that's, again, it comes down to strategy. So it's a similar point to what I made. And
Sure.
so there is, a lot of cost cutting,
Mm.
a lot of and so in these tough times. And by the way, I'm an optimist, and I definitely think we're going to be coming out of it now, especially in the
Yeah.
tech sector, and I've seen some in the other sectors, retail sector in particular, some great results coming out this morning that things are kind of recovering.
Yeah.
But in these times, I think marketing teams need to be seen as more than just churning the funnel.
Yeah.
just we need to be kind of strategic players and advisors and kind of helping the executive kind of all the management teams focus on, so what are the fastest recovering sectors in our
Mm,
market, right? Who should
mm,
we really be targeting? And with what campaigns, our limited budget, and really like focusing on that recovery, being part of that recovery, right?
yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the toughest things, not just marketing, but all professionals. But I think marketers tend to get, um, impacted the most. And I think just, I think again, it's a bit of a repeat, but I just think getting the basics right,
Yeah.
not just executing and focusing on that, but executing against the right
Yeah.
market in the right time at the right place in a more consistent manner. Now,
Yeah.
when we all go to do our marketing courses or go to, whatever it is, however we train up to be marketers, we are taught these things, right? And
Mm,
these are the obvious things, but actually we don't do it properly. We don't understand our audience, we don't understand their needs, we don't know how to speak with them. And in particular in the B2B space, this is a B2B problem, which is, who is the decision maker when it comes to our, buying our offerings or whatever? Is it the user?
yeah.
Is it the
Yeah.
senior exec? Is it somewhere in
Yeah.
between?
Yeah.
And depending on our different offerings, and most of these companies have multiple offerings, those ratios change. The level of influence and the whole go-to-market changes. Yet we have a single go-to-market, typically speaking, in an average, say, $100 million company, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we just like trying to hit the nail, and so those are the problems: the lack of sophistication
Yeah.
around our marketing overall, right?
Yeah, yeah, you're so right. It's often just a single track strategy, but how ludicrous is that really when we sell, well, when we solve so many different problems because we're speaking to so many different people, businesses, organizations who have different things that keep them up at night,
Mhm.
and therefore, why are we just pushing one message? And of course, not everybody does it that way, but I agree with you that that kind of unilateral way of thinking and approaching marketing has to change. Otherwise, it's we're not resonating with
Yeah,
anybody. It's
exactly.
far too
Yeah,
broad
but
across
you
the
know what
board.
the response is, and you'll know this, of course. But is that, oh, we're only a small marketing team with a small budget. We just need to do one thing. But I think you can get 80% of the benefit of a bifurcated or a multi approach by just focusing on your top two or three
Yeah.
uh, kind of markets, and two or three different ways of branding with them, reaching them and
Mm,
engaging with them, right?
mm,
And you can do that in a very efficient way as kind of
mm.
marketers. And so, okay, so you don't have, say you have 10 different markets or different categories that are, if you just the top three, and
Yeah.
already you're getting 80% of the benefit. So yeah, you might be a small marketing team, but you can make big differences by just like subtle changes in what you do, I think.
Absolutely. I always think about it, if we're building a house, and this is often what I advise. And when I'm speaking to a small organization, they want to make an impact with their marketing, not sure how. It's absolutely not the way to go and attack everything in all in one go, because we're going to be doing about 5% effort on that thing. It's not going to have a good impact.
Yep,
So you need to think about it as building blocks. And why don't we just focus on one building block and do that really, really well until that's up and running. And then we add
yep,
another building block, because then the house that we eventually build is going to be really, really solid, going to be able to withstand whatever comes at it. But I think often people rushed and try to cover everything that could possibly be involved in a marketing strategy. And the result is 3 months down the line, we're having to
yeah,
revise it because nothing's working.
exactly.
And
So
yeah,
generating value, right? Show
yeah,
value first before you extend,
yeah,
increase your cost or whatever it is you want to do, right? If you
yeah.
just, yeah, so I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it is very, very tough, and I understand it from marketers. And the more platforms and channels that become available, the more pressure is on them to, people will be saying to them, "Oh, why don't we in our marketing department? Why don't we do
Mhm.
that? Why don't we get on TikTok? Why don't we do this?" And sometimes I feel that they can be sucked into doing things without properly considering, is that going to serve us? Is that going to be a good choice for us?
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
think they need to maybe have stronger barriers to entry maybe for the things that they accept that they will work on because it's their time at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But no, very very interesting. I wonder then, speaking of all the challenges, and there are a lot of them, but like you say, I too am an optimist, and I think things are turning in a good direction now. What recently in your world and in your marketing and the things that you've been working on have you implemented? And recently, I'm talking maybe across the last year, last couple of years that you previously weren't focusing on too much. Now you are, and actually, it's been a bit of a game changer. Do you have any kind of examples of things like that?
Yeah, so yeah, broadly put, I'd put it into like integrated strategy. What does that mean?
Yeah.
So kind of, and essentially the whole discussion of product-led growth that you kind of seen a lot in kind of B2C kind of app-based scenarios, right?
Mm,
Where they actually don't have your typical marketing departments, but they have product marketing where they kind of drive adoption of the product through various kind of techniques which are like super interesting. And
mm,
I think when you in a B2B technology marketing perspective, I've seen that they've started adopting that, right? Those kind of
mm,
approaches. So for instance, and it's not that it hasn't happened before, it's just more focused on like freemium models, like
yeah.
providing value to to people in a trial basis or whatever, and then actually providing that value, and then providing them a path to extending their kind of features and functions. But
Mm,
also within like enterprise kind of deals, you can still have access or visibility of other capabilities and functions that you can easily subscribe to. So when marketing's involved with the product, and
mm,
have and it kind of works out that they are responsible for kind of their KPIs are driven through product adoption as
yeah.
part of that. You can see some big changes up what I'd say. Is it upstream? Yeah, it is upstream to the
Sure.
funnel areas. So you're bringing in the right people, right, you're focusing on the right markets or the right user types to get them to use it, because you actually start to see that these types of users adopt certain types of features and functions. And so
Yeah.
you then really helps you with understanding your audiences a lot better and your customers a lot better. And so, yeah, joining up, and it's another word for it is full customer lifecycle marketing, but
Sure.
tactically, it means bringing it together, your marketing-led growth and your product-led growth into an integrated growth strategy.
Mm,
Now, that's awesome, but I've never seen any perfect like end-to-end one, but just starting certain parts of that really is where I've seen some definite kind of upticks in terms of revenue, repeatable
yeah.
revenue, or growth from existing customer bases kind of
Yeah.
really kind of grows, which in a tough environment, right? A lot of,
Yeah.
especially in the tech sector and probably other sectors as well, a lot of your business is grown by your existing customers. And so getting marketing involved with that has been super interesting. Um, Perhaps on I've got a note to myself here, on another
Yeah. Yeah.
more
Sure.
tactical part of that is influencer marketing.
Yes.
So a lot of
Okay. Interesting.
yeah. So you mentioned social. Now, obviously, social is like super important, and I think
Hmm.
is needed. But I think like your press strategy,
Mm,
I've seen that undervalued in terms of what press can really do for
sure.
you, and engaging in having a great press officer that kind of
Mm,
she or he kind of well, having an agency that is money well spent, I think,
yeah.
especially in the B2B tech space, and it's one way of getting ahead of your competitors, because that's totally. So if I know you engage with other sectors, so you think, oh, what the hell, that must be
Yeah.
obvious, but it's not obvious in the tech sector. Funny enough, it's
Mm,
not so obvious, and then only because I come from that space as well, engaging with the analyst community,
hmm.
again. You don't have to spend a bunch of money to influence an analyst, right? So yeah, having subtle powerful tactics to engage and influence and so those are some of the areas, especially in like late 2023, early 24, that I've seen that I've actually been involved with those kind of tactics that have shown
Yeah.
some real kind of results around that.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And I think you're so right with everyone's heard of influence marketing, everyone understands it, but I think it still gets so
Well, they just think TikTok.
maybe
Well, that's it. I've
yeah,
done it.
100%, and also B2C only, and we're
Yeah.
not right for that sort of thing. But actually, it's that mindset that, to our conversation earlier, that that marketing leaders do need to start kind of shedding off, because it's those things. It's called the blank space, isn't it? Or it's called the white space where nobody else is right now. So
Mhm.
you need to go there and you need to start making that work for your industry. Because, like you say, in B2B tech, that wouldn't be something maybe that a lot of people would think is synonymous with influencer marketing. But hey, it's been working really well. And I think it's that we need to stop having these blanket kind of generalizations over, oh, that channel doesn't work for this sector, or that channel is definite for this sector, and challenge those beliefs. Because, like you say, they all can be very outdated.
Yeah.
Um,
And
I
updated
think
doesn't take long nowadays. It's such a
no.
fast-moving environment. Yeah, something that was like, let's say a rule like a year ago is not necessarily
Mm,
valid now, today, even today,
no.
right? So you got to
Yeah.
keep challenging, perspectives and keep challenging the way. This is kind of where I think it's really exciting for especially people entering into the marketing, early on in their career, is that you
Mm,
can have a big impact because, people like me that have been around for forever, it's just new things that are happening all the time. And you, as a somebody who's just come into the industry, is just as valid opinion as somebody
yeah.
who's been around for a while because the rules are changing so quickly, right?
Yes.
So it's like super
Yeah.
exciting.
And I think that's a really good thing if we do have anybody who's uh, starting off in their career, kind of listening and tuning in. That is immense value that you
Mm,
bring. And I think in a lot of industries, away from marketing, there can be that real imposter syndrome, can't there? Of the
yeah,
time equals experience, time equals value. But like you say, with marketing, it just isn't the case. I mean, obviously, people who have had more years in the industry have sat through many of these reports and these meetings and these iterations of a strategy
mm,
before. But yeah, you bring a fresh perspective. You bring expertise that you kind of just naturally have accrued through being in a different generation, and that's really, really valuable.
yeah,
So yeah, and I guess then, if we were talking to people who are starting out in a marketing career, it's that curiosity, it's that confidence as well, like we talked about before, to put forward new ideas and to put forward new platforms and channels. I
yeah.
wonder if there's anything else that you think younger marketers should really bring to the table.
Well, I
Um,
think, I mean, besides being brave, which we've talked about, right? I'd say,
mm,
yeah, as a marketer, whoever you are, by the way, whether it's younger or older, whatever, you need to be brave, take risks. But I think doing that in an informed way, so
mm,
we're getting back to the whole data kind of driven. If you've got
mm,
a thought or an opinion, that's awesome. You can approach that in two ways. One is, hey, product team, marketing team, whatever, I've got this idea.
yeah.
If you and there's about 10 people around the table, all with great ideas. Which one is whoever's leading or making the decision is going to
Mm,
decide? Well, they're going to make a decision. If it's a good leader,
mm,
she or he'll make a decision based on what's backing that up. So that's the
yeah.
first thing. What data do you have to kind of show that a particular market is underserved, for instance. So do
Mm,
your homework when you come there. So it's not just about the creativity, it's about the
yeah.
science behind that, right? And then
Mm,
secondly, how do you, as a leader taking like a great idea from somebody who you've just employed, it's also, well, how are you going to implement it in a risk-free way? My career's on the line as a leader.
yes. Yeah.
If I implement that, my boss she's gonna like kick my ass. So how
Mm,
am I going to do it in a kind of risk-free way? So using experimentation,
yeah.
particularly around new channels that you might be chasing,
Yes.
new marketing campaigns. How can you do it in a reduced cost, lower risk way that kind of shows
Mm,
value and the lack of impact, negative impact before you expand. So, if you can go to whoever's making that decision and say, "I've got this great idea. This
mm,
is the data that kind of shows that it's probably a underserved market in an underserved way to
yeah.
market. And by the way, I also think we should do it, in an iterative way, in this kind of way that does this first, proves the value before we then invest a bit more money. So you can say, hey, boss, don't worry, I'm not asking you to invest everything now, just a little bit, just to kind of prove it to you. If you can
Yeah.
have that kind of informed, considered approach, then
Yeah.
bring your creativity. That's kind of what we need
Yeah.
from our young marketers.
Yeah, love that. And that goes back to your really very first point of have that left brain, right brain all the time. Bring
Yeah,
that, bring the creativity, but bring it backed up by data, or bring the data and then also bring creative ideas off that, because how are
yeah,
you going to implement that learning? So yeah, I guess that's the important thing. Two wheels of the bicycle, like you said at the beginning.
yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. And then what about kind of moving away from those things? I mean, fascinating what you've implemented and what's really been working. And I think there's some great takeaways there. In terms of what's coming, 2024, 2025, 2026, what do you think we're going to see more of? And I guess you can talk either in the more B2B tech sector or just generally in marketing. What do you foresee? And I guess either positively or negatively, things that are coming
Yeah,
that
yeah,
are a little bit
exactly.
worrying, or things that potentially are exciting. What's your view on that?
Well, I'm going to have to mention, let's get the AI thing out the way because
Up
everybody's going to
against
say
the
that, right?
front line. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But exactly how that's going to be applied, that's what interests me, right?
Sure.
And whether you call it AI, like I'm a data scientist to a certain level anyway, and AI is just a term for some sophisticated algorithm sometimes,
Yeah.
such as predictive scoring, right? So a
Mm,
lot of these systems that marketers are using today, whether it's your personalization system, whether it is your, say, your digital analytics, web analytics, or your attribution system,
yeah.
whether whatever technology you're using nowadays, the suppliers of those technologies are embedding sophisticated what you might term AI. They'll call it AI, but
Yeah.
just capabilities to, for instance, identify untapped audiences or high value audiences, right? And
Yeah.
really kind of create the attribution around that. And also around automated experiences. So if you're kind of involved with ad delivery or even like, which is some of my specialty is on-site personalization.
Yeah.
There's those things are going to be easier. They've been around for a while. It's just, I think, you're kind of seeing it this year that a lot of the technologies that a lot of providers are providing are now, it's just a lot easier to kind of do. And
Yeah.
so that's the part of AI that really, or if you want to call it that, right? This kind of algorithmic generation that
Yeah.
we're seeing, that's going to be really exciting. You're going to start see the realization of the value that we've been speaking about for the last 3 to 4 years, right? That's actually
Yeah.
happening this year. So
Yeah.
that's the first exciting thing.
Yeah,
Um,
very exciting. People learning how to adopt it a bit better. And I think that's always
yeah,
going to take time. It's not like something can just be dropped into the market and straight away we all pick it up and use it to its advantage. But I think it's taken a really long time when you think about, I mean, I know it's
mm,
been around for a long time, but when it really started to come into circulation, and still now you hear about it and people aren't really deploying it very well or don't
yeah.
understand really how to manipulate it. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think that's definitely going to be exciting.
Yeah, it's
Um,
what I would term like embedded AI, right? So it's
yeah,
embedded
yeah,
in the problem that you're trying to solve. You're not going to some like AI data
yeah.
science like thing, but this is
Yeah,
all actually in the process of whatever you're doing. It's all like better, and so yeah, that's super
yeah, interesting.
exciting.
Mm,
So the negative part of that, so
mm,
is, and it's actually I've read a few books on that, and I haven't seen too much of it myself yet because of it's just you don't have wide deployments, the inherent biases in
mm,
some of these kind of algorithms, right?
yeah,
And I think, we're not going to see it this year. I think we're going to have to wait to scale maybe 25, 26. You're going to start to see stories coming out about like, hey, you were like targeting me because of like some of the biases. So some of those biases are maybe positive, but some of those will be
yeah,
negative. So really, I think as marketers really understanding what these systems are doing and how they're doing it and how they're coming to, you're going to have some level of knowledge or advice or guidance, right? So
yes,
that's the negative part, but you'll only start to see that once you start to get a better rollout of these techniques, right? If I'm running out a personalization system to a certain segment of the market, and
mm,
why am I doing that? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Most of the times
mm,
it'll be great, so that, but some of the times it won't be, right? And so just
mm,
being careful, protecting your brand, protecting your own efficacy is going to be like that's the flip side of that.
yeah,
But that's probably a 48 month kind of thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Interesting, yeah. And of the companies that you or organizations or just general kind of marketing leaders that you work with and speak to, what percentage of people do you think are now starting to like really effectively use AI, or do you think still it's very, very low in its deployment?
Yeah, I mean that's I would say that that is. I mean, you can get questions about when you ask questions, and people will tell you, right? But I would say that a lot of those surveys are invalidated by the fact what is AI, Sophie?
Yeah,
James, what is AI? You know, you go to data science, what is AI, right? Um, what I can say though is that because of embedded AI, this kind of phase we're going through, where it's not just a data science team implementing
hmm,
in a separate platform and giving you like segments to themselves, and that's a project is now embedded and becoming a lot easier. You're definitely starting to see acceleration of people that are using sophisticated mathematical algorithms to drive their marketing,
yeah,
segmentation, analysis,
hmm,
execution, etc. And if you just look at it from a capabilities perspective, certainly in marketing tech that I know and I cover, bar none, they all have some capabilities that are being used.
yeah,
So you can almost say, 100% of marketers that leverage technology to drive marketing campaigns are using some form of AI,
yeah.
right?
As it becomes more embedded,
So
yeah,
it's a lot more subtle than like what percent, the question is how many of them are using it to drive differentiation? And typically
hmm,
that percentage will always be about 10 to 15% max,
yeah,
right? Will
yeah,
actually drive differentiation because as soon as the rest of everybody else catches up to their approach, there's a different approach that those leading people will be kind of leading. So yeah, it's
yeah.
a subtle question to answer, I have to say.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I think yeah that it's more it's organization versus individual in a way. I mean, what you're talking about there with the embedded AI is we're all going to start using it more even without sort of opting. Right, I'm going to use AI on this because AI is just inherently within everything that we are using to do our marketing.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, it very very interesting, and yeah, I'll be keen to see how it evolves as well. I think positive and negative, as you say, things
yeah, yeah.
definitely to be aware of and sort of think about in advance.
Just
Anything
one
else?
one more thing,
Yeah, go
so
ahead, go
Sophie,
ahead.
just on the for the next 12 months, I think, and in terms of what's going to really disrupt marketing. Apologies, I'm my ex-analyst, I tend to take over the discussion. So,
You go
but
for it. You go ahead.
the one thing is sustainability and ethical marketing. We kind of covered that
Okay.
a little bit already, but I
Hmm.
think it's very, human beings are very empathetic creatures. What does that mean? I mean, it means some of us are kind and etc. But it also means that
Hmm.
we understand intent of
Yeah.
organizations, and we're very clever at doing that, right? And yeah, we understand if a company is kind of genuine or not. Generally speaking, they're very good at kind of picking that up. And so injecting or understanding the efficacy and the sustainability kind of messages that your company has,
Yes.
and then amplifying those. Those will
Hmm.
be the things that will gain you significant differentiation in
Hmm.
terms of your messaging.
Hmm.
Doing that in a non genuine way. So, for instance, making claims or even postulating that of efficacy and sustainability, that
Hmm.
can have a really negative impact. So, I think sustainability and efficacy in your marketing and the way that you do it is really a powerful thing, but it can go
Hmm.
both ways. And you need to, as marketers, be very involved with the culture, not only of the company but of your executive and leadership, and be able to amplify the good bits of that
Yeah.
in a genuine way, and then you can really gain. So that'll be you're definitely starting to see some campaigns around that are becoming quite effective. You've seen a few missteps in the past because of that, because you're
Yeah.
essentially making in non-genuine kind of statements about
Yeah.
your efficacy and sustainability, particularly in the retail sector, right? And
Yeah.
um, doing that properly is going to be a thing for the next 12 to 24 months. I just want to get that in there. Apologies,
No, absolutely. I
Sophia.
think it, no, I think it's a really good point, and it's something that, yeah, consumers are definitely becoming more shrewd too, and it's definitely more important in the decision-making process. And like
Mhm.
you say, it's not just something anymore, whether it could have ever been, I'm not sure, but certainly now, it can't just be something that's a throwaway comment on social media or some kind of tagline that we attach to an organization. Has to be lived and breathed, and people are very, very good and very intent on finding out if it has integrity or if it's just something that they're putting out there to make themselves look good. And I think, yeah, that authenticity, I mean, authenticity is something that gets talked about a lot, isn't it? But It's very important, sustainability wise. Yeah, and everything else. And yeah, I think that's an important point to raise. There's lots of interesting. I saw something, can't remember the name now, but almost like a trust pilot for sustainability within a business. And so
Yeah,
consumers can go on there and look at the directory and kind of see how well they're rated for genuine sustainability practices. And I think things like that rising up as a way of people rating and deciding which kind of companies they want to
yeah.
engage with is very interesting.
So I think those are good for the new customer channel, right? If I'm a new
Mm,
customer coming into a brand, right, and I'm going,
mm,
oh, should I get this product or do this? I'll go to the trust pilots or the other kind of social rating systems that there are out there. But if you want to sustain customers, if you want repeatable
yeah,
customers, you don't need that. Those customers will, because they'll engage with you very quickly through the product, through the service, through the after sales care, through the way that you engage. They will pick that up,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And marketing needs to be really much involved with understanding that experience that they are kind of
Mm,
providing, right? And so if you want to, your existing customers are your best business, right?
yeah,
And so those are the kind of key things around this kind of efficacy, the sustainability. Do you have that throughout everything that you do, and
yeah.
not just those two messages, but elsewhere, right? How much you care about your customers, etc. Those It's important that you're genuine about those statements and show it.
Absolutely, because if you do make wrong turn, that will make its way to the surface, and we
Exactly,
see
yeah.
that all the time.
It's the age of the
With
customer.
It
That's
is.
it's it.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But the more we're aware of that, the more we mitigate against that. So, yeah, no, really interesting. Thank you for sharing those. We have a
Mhm.
couple of minutes left. I always like to
Okay.
end the podcast just by asking you, completely away from what we've been talking about today, really fascinating. But if you, James, hadn't gone into marketing, and perhaps thinking about yourself on those seasick days when you were working with the diamonds, what do you think you would have done instead? It may be something that you always wish that you might have gone into, or maybe a more genuine possibility it's
Mhm.
something that you might have done as a career. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's many things, right? I wish I had, I mean, like everybody, 10 lives to do it. But actually, the one thing I think I've failed at in life is I wanted to be an astronaut. I just wanted
Oh,
to be an astronaut. That's why I became a geologist, because Neil Armstrong was a geologist. That's why I was actually in the Air Force for a bit.
okay.
But I just failed at doing that. So if I could rerun my life again, I would give it another go. But yeah, you know what? I'm very happy with what I'm doing at the moment. It's super interesting. The
Mm,
you know the context that we all find ourselves in today, and the opportunities that we have, even as marketers, or especially as marketers, to make a real change in the world, is exactly where I want to be right now. But yeah, wouldn't mind being there. If you give me a one-way ticket to Mars, don't tell my wife, but I might take it.
that might be the next holiday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, you never know. With the way everything's going, that might become a possibility. But yeah, well, always
I love
interesting
your
to
optimism, Sophie. I'll be
yeah,
there.
yeah. Who knows? Who knows what 2025 is going to bring?
Yeah.
No, very interesting. And that kind of brings us to the end of the session. But really, thank you so much, James, for your time today. I think it's been really interesting discussion. I think people are going to take a lot away from the episode. And yeah, thank you for sharing your thoughts, trends, insights, what's been happening in the past, what's going to happen in the next couple of years. And let's sort of see what does unfold. And I'm sure it'll be really interesting and lots to learn always from kind of the changes in the industry and what happens. So, yeah, thank you so much for coming on today.
It's very kind of you, and thank you, Sophie. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, James. Bye. See you soon.
Bye.